You ever see a man slowly die while smiling? Look closely. He's the man you pass in grocery stores, carefully stacking items into a cart his wife meticulously organized. He's the man fiddling with Wi-Fi routers, rebooting connections not just for the internet, but for a marriage slowly buffering to nowhere. He's the man sitting across the dinner table, eyes fixed on a woman who once screamed his name in passion, but now barely acknowledges his existence. His smile remains. His soul? Fading. The tragedy isn't that he's dying. The tragedy is that he doesn't even know it. He believes he's being patient, being mature, being everything she ever asked for. Compromise after compromise, apology after apology, each one carving away a piece of his masculinity. And yet, society applauds him. Good man, they say, a real partner. But beneath that mask of patience lies a slow erasure. And here's the cruelest part. He volunteered for it. He's you. He's your brother. He's your coworker. He's the version of yourself you're terrified to become. But why does this happen? Why do so many men, intelligent, loyal, deeply loving, find themselves in this slow emotional funeral? Why does a woman say she wants sensitivity, only to later withdraw from the man who offers it? Why do they beg for communication, only to lose respect the more you open up? Why do they preach equality but crave leadership? And perhaps the most maddening of all, why does she say she wants a nice guy, but vanish the moment she gets one? This isn't just your confusion. This isn't simply modern dating. This is a paradox older than civilization itself. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher whose words slice through romantic illusions like a blade, called this a biological crucifixion, a natural paradox so brutal that few men survive its lessons without bitterness, despair, or complete disillusionment. With women, love is and remains a matter of the will of nature, not of personal feeling. Schopenhauer let that sink in. You see, what she says she wants is shaped by culture, by polite scripts, by social expectations. But what she responds to, that is dictated by millions of years of evolutionary design. And nature, cold, merciless, efficient, doesn't care about your birthday surprises or your heartfelt text messages. Nature only asks one thing. Can you lead? Can you hold steady when the world around her shakes? What she seeks isn't love, not as you understand it. She seeks gravity, something powerful enough to pull her into orbit, something dangerous enough to humble her soul. And yet, most men, tragically, are taught the exact opposite. We are trained to interpret women's words literally, as if attraction is a contract. We are told, listen to her words, and you will understand her needs. But attraction isn't built on logic. It's built on polarity, on tension, on the dance between chaos and order. Her chaos, your order. Nature uses women to filter weak men out of the gene pool, not by violence, but by disinterest. Schopenhauer understands this, and you'll unlock a terrifying truth. She's not lying to you. She's not manipulating you. She simply doesn't know what she wants, because what she wants can't be spoken. It must be felt. And when man no longer provides that feeling, when he sacrifices his edges, his boundaries, his mystery in the name of comfort, she withers, not out of cruelty, but because biology programmed her nervous system to respond only to strength-wrapped instability. The tragedy. Most men become most vulnerable at the precise moment they should be most immovable. The moment you start performing for her comfort, the moment you give up your own center, you cease to be the man she once admired. You were not born to be a boyfriend. You were born to be a man. This is not a hatred of women. This is not bitterness. This is not blame. This is clarity. Because once you see the hidden machinery underneath her smiles, her confusion, her contradictions, you stop hating her. You start understanding her. And most importantly, you begin to reclaim yourself. The brutal mechanism of biology. Nature doesn't negotiate. Let's strip away the romance, strip away the poetry, Strip away the Hallmark card version of love that's been force-fed into your bloodstream since you were a boy. Because beneath all the social contracts, beneath the carefully curated words spoken on dates, beneath the well-meaning promises of partnership and equality, there's something far older, far colder, far more primal: nature. And nature doesn't negotiate. If you want to understand why so many modern men suffer silently while following all the right advice, you must first confront this brutal fact. Attraction isn't moral, it isn't fair, and it isn't based on how good of a man you are. It's biological. Schopenhauer saw this long before anyone had a word for evolutionary psychology, long before dating coaches and relationship podcasts tried to dissect female behavior with half-baked pop science. He saw what most men are too terrified to admit. Men are by nature more capable of objectivity, while women act more as the instruments of the species. Let that sentence punch through your illusions. Her nature doesn't care about your character. It cares about your signal, your job title, your loyalty, your emotional openness. Those are cultural badges, useful for society, irrelevant to her instincts. Her biology is running a different software, one that's been running for millions of years, and that software has one directive: survival of the fittest. You see, women are evolution's gatekeepers. Their bodies, their nervous systems, their attraction responses all exist to filter the gene pool, to sort strength from weakness, not through conscious deliberation, but through something far more dangerous: disinterest. A man doesn't lose a woman's respect because he forgets her birthday. He loses it because she subconsciously senses his weakening frame, his fading gravity, his shrinking edges. Attraction isn't earned. It's maintained through your stability in the face of her storm. And here's the part that shatters most men. Even she doesn't consciously understand why her desire flickers, because her words, her values, her socially conditioned beliefs, those exist at the surface level. But her attraction response is subterranean, ancient, pre-verbal, beyond reason. The sexual impulse is the most complete manifestation of the will to live. Schopenhauer, her will to live, not just personally but generationally, is what's evaluating you at every moment, quietly, relentlessly, without mercy. The paradox of words versus biology. You've heard it 1,000 times. I just want a man who listens. I want emotional vulnerability. I want someone who's sensitive and understanding. And yet, watch who she desires. Watch who she chases. Watch who lingers in her mind long after he's walked away. It's not the man who floods her with words. It's the man whose presence speaks for itself. Because at her deepest level, she's not listening to your words. She's feeling your state. Words can lie, but energy cannot. She wants vulnerability, yes, but not the kind you were taught. Not tears, not insecurity, not endless confessions about your fears. She wants your controlled vulnerability, the kind that radiates from a man who has faced his chaos and mastered it. A man who doesn't need her to fix him, but who allows glimpses of his depths as a gift, not as a plea. A man who has not mastered himself is not fit to be the master of anything, least of all a woman's heart. Schopenhauer. This is the brutal law men keep breaking. The moment your need exceeds your frame, you collapse her desire. Nature's unspoken tests. Every interaction with a woman, whether you recognize it or not, is a test, not a conscious test she's plotting in her mind. A biological test. Can you hold tension? Can you lead without begging? Can you remain calm under emotional pressure? Can you remain the mountain while she cycles through storms? Most men fail these tests not because they're weak, but because they don't even realize they're being tested. They think, if I just explain myself better, she'll understand. If I give more, she'll feel more secure. If I open up more, she'll love me deeper. And every time they double down on words, on reassurance, on emotional availability, they unknowingly step further into the quicksand, because she's not searching for more information. She's searching for presence, for certainty, for stability under pressure. The predictability. Death spiral. When you first met her, you were unpredictable. Not in a reckless way, but in a magnetic way. She didn't know what you'd say next. She felt tension. She felt polarity. She felt mystery. But over Time, most men, terrified of losing her, begin to soften their edges. They avoid conflict. They over-explain. They anticipate every mood, every preference, every possible discomfort. And in doing so, they slowly become predictable. And predictability is the death of seduction. The moment she can predict your every move, she loses the thrill. And when there's no mystery, there's no tension. Without tension, there's no seduction. Understand this. Desire lives in tension. Tension lives in unpredictability. And unpredictability lives in your sovereignty. Not recklessness, not chaos, but unapologetic wholeness. When you become a man who no longer performs for her approval, but invites her into your orbit while remaining grounded, you reawaken the primal mechanism that first drew her in. She's not cruel. She's programmed now. You may hear this and feel anger, betrayal, even bitterness. Don't. This isn't her fault. It's her design. She's not manipulating you. She's not even fully aware of the mechanisms at play. She simply responds to what her nervous system was designed to detect. Strength, stability, unshakable presence, purpose independent of her approval. Schopenhauer didn't write this as a condemnation of women. He wrote it as a revelation for men. The more you see her as the architect of your downfall, the more you miss the point. She is simply the mirror, a mirror reflecting whether you are rooted or performing. And here's the final blow most men never recover from. You lost her not because you weren't enough. You lost her because you made her everything. The man she first admired didn't orbit her. He invited her into his orbit. The moment you reverse that polarity, you begin erasing the very force that attracted her to you in the first place. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. Schopenhauer biology isn't kind, but it is honest. Nature's system is brutal, but it's honest. You're not competing with other men. You're competing with yourself, with your gravity, with your presence, with your ability to stand fully in your masculine essence without apologizing, without performing, without negotiating. That's the battlefield most men never train for. They train for pleasing, accommodating, explaining, performing. But nature only rewards one thing: rooted masculinity. The man who no longer needs her, but chooses her from his wholeness. That's the man. Her nervous system cannot resist. The battlefield isn't her. It's you. And once you understand that, you stop trying to fix her. You stop trying to decode her words. You stop trying to buy your way back into her desire. Instead, you rebuild yourself. And when you do, nature recognizes you again. The erosion of admiration. Why her gaze fades. Do you remember the first time she looked at you? Not with politeness, not with casual interest, but with reverence. Her eyes sparkled like they had just discovered gravity itself had a name, and it was yours. In that moment, you weren't simply attractive, you were undeniable. And if you're honest with yourself, you felt something too. Not just desire, not just infatuation. You felt seen. For a brief flicker of time, you were no longer competing with the world. You had become the world, the man, the center of her feminine orbit. Her nervous system hummed with that primal recognition. This is a man I can surrender to. But then, something happened. Weeks, months, sometimes years later, her eyes began to dim. The glow was still there, faintly. The politeness remained. The affection lingered. But the spark was gone, and neither of you could fully explain why. You hadn't betrayed her. You hadn't stopped loving her. In fact, you were probably giving more than ever. More attention, more devotion, more emotional availability, more sacrifices, and yet, she grew colder. You felt it in the way she stopped initiating, in the way she smiled more out of habit than passion, in the way her laughter, once effortless, now seemed rehearsed, and inside a silent panic grew. What am I doing wrong? The trap of increasing investment. Like most men, you likely doubled down on the only strategy you knew. More date nights, more reassurances, more compliments, more compromise. But what you didn't realize is that you were feeding a monster, not of her making, but of your own. The erosion of polarity. You walked straight into the slaughter wearing a suit of sincerity because nobody told you the truth. Every act of overgiving, every surrender of your boundaries, every appeasement slowly chipped away at the very force that once made her nervous system sing, because the man she first admired wasn't performing for her comfort. He was standing in his purpose. He didn't need her to validate his direction. He offered her a place beside him, not above him. Why the nice guy always loses. Society loves to glorify the nice guy. Sensitive, accommodating, always available, always explaining, always there. But what society calls nice, nature often calls unfit, because niceness, divorced from strength, isn't attractive. It's suffocating. It signals to her nervous system. You are more concerned with her mood than your mission. You are more invested in avoiding discomfort than commanding direction. You are more eager to be liked than to be respected. The more you act like the man she said she wanted, the less you become the man her nature needs to respect. The paradox? She wasn't lying when she said she wanted those things. At the surface, she believes them. She wants to want them. But her biology answers to a deeper authority. A man who orbits her emotions, who sacrifices his center for her approval, who negotiates his masculinity for her temporary comfort, becomes invisible to the very part of her that once adored him. You don't lose her because you failed to love her enough. You lose her because you tried to replace your gravity with your love. The slow death of admiration. Admiration is not built through gifts, words, or romantic gestures. Admiration is built through energetic polarity, through your groundedness, through your boundaries, through your unshakable direction, through your self-sufficiency. The moment she senses that you've become emotionally dependent on her reactions, even subtly, her respect begins to erode. And once admiration dies, desire follows. She may stay out of obligation. She may remain polite. She may even convince herself that she still loves you, but her body knows the truth, and eventually that truth surfaces in withdrawal, in irritation, in passive resentment, in distance masked as space. You didn't lose her in one moment. You lost her one compromise at a time. The fatal mistake, trying to fix her distance. When men first notice this growing distance, their instincts betray them. They believe the solution is to address her behavior. Are you okay? Is something wrong? What can I do? Let's talk about it. But these conversations rarely restore desire, because the problem isn't her mood. It's your frame. Your attempt to fix her emotions signals to her nervous system. You're no longer the leader. You've abdicated your throne. You're now following her emotional weather rather than remaining her calm. The more you seek reassurance, the more she internally recoils. Not because she's cruel, but because she can't. Surrender to a man who's surrendered himself. You became that for her in trying to protect the relationship. You sacrificed the very you she once respected. You went from leader to pleaser, from edge to echo. The man she fell for, Vries. The man she left. It's important to understand that you're not competing with other men. You're competing with yourself. The man you once were. The man who had a mission, had standards, had edges, had direction, had a life before her. When she first admired you, it wasn't because you were bending to fit her world. It was because you invited her into yours. And as time went on, if you slowly made her your mission, rather than living your mission with her as your complement, you inverted the dynamic. You stopped being the mountain. You became the mudslide. The biological script Schopenhauer understood this dynamic with surgical precision. Women exist in the main solely for the propagation of the species and are only the means thereto. Modern ears hear this and scream misogyny. But Schopenhauer wasn't attacking women. He was describing nature's design. Women are biologically wired to evaluate men based on their fitness to lead, to protect, to provide stability, not just materially, but emotionally. And when you surrender that leadership, even in the name of love, her biology withdraws. Love without leadership dissolves into pity. Desire without polarity dissolves into comfort. And comfort, in excess, is attraction's grave. The unspoken grief of men. Most men never speak of this grief, the grief of watching her eyes dim, the grief of watching her pull away, the grief of giving everything and losing everything. And worst of all, the confusion. Because you did what you were taught, you listened, you opened up, you shared, you sacrificed, and it still wasn't enough. The truth. Most men never learn. Here's the truth. Society hides from you. She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you became too safe. Safe without mystery. Safe without strength. Safe without sovereignty. Women crave certainty, yes, but not the certainty of predictability. They crave the certainty of your unwavering self-possession. The certainty that you will not collapse, no matter how turbulent her emotions may become. That you will hold your frame. That you will remain her lighthouse, even when her storms rage. The path back isn't through her, it's through you. You cannot fix this by talking more, buying more, pleading more, explaining more. The path back begins the moment you say, I would rather be alone than unseen. That's when resurrection begins. That's when gravity returns. That's when her nervous system remembers the man she first saw. That solitude isn't loneliness. It's recalibration, because when you rediscover your power, your mission, your sharpness, women feel it before you say a word. Admiration isn't a gift she gives. It's a state you generate, and once you reclaim that state, you no longer chase her gaze. You simply become the man whose presence commands it. The language of emotion, what men fail to understand. Let me tell you a cruel but liberating truth. She doesn't speak your language, not because she's incapable, not because she's playing games, but because you, as a man, were wired for a different operating system. You process words as contracts. She speaks in currents. You seek clarity through logic. She seeks connection through emotion. And this misalignment is where most male suffering is born. Words are political. Emotions are primal. When a woman speaks, she's often not giving you a manual. She's not outlining exact instructions for behavior. She's expressing momentary emotional states shaped by a swirling blend of biology, hormones, social expectations, and subconscious drives. But you, raised in a society that tells you to listen carefully and follow her lead, interpret her words literally. She says, I want you to open up more. You hear, share your feelings in detail. She says, I need more communication. You hear, explain everything you're feeling. She says, I want vulnerability. You hear, expose every fear and insecurity I carry. And so, like the dutiful student you are, you comply. You open the floodgates. You share your every wound. You confess your deepest doubts, believing, desperately, that intimacy will deepen. But instead, something shifts. She grows quiet, less engaged, less responsive, less attracted, and you sit there heartbroken, whispering to yourself, but I gave her everything she asked for. What she says versus what she means. Here's where most men get lost. What she says is often shaped by her social self. What she responds to is governed by her biological self. What she says, those are her social scripts, her PR team, her political correctness. But what she wants, that's ancient, pre-verbal, cold. It does not negotiate. It does not care about your intentions. It doesn't read poetry. It smells power. When she says vulnerability, she doesn't mean emotional collapse. She means emotional mastery, a man who has confronted his storms and holds them without drowning. When she says communication, she doesn't mean endless dialogue. She means clarity of presence, a man whose energy radiates certainty without excessive words. When she says emotional availability, she means availability of stability, not a man who needs her approval to feel secure. She's not lying. She just doesn't speak your language. The masculine need for logic, the feminine need for experience. As men, we crave systems. We crave rules. We crave frameworks. If I do A, then B will happen. We want relationships to function, like math equations. But feminine energy doesn't live in equations. It lives in dynamics, in how your voice vibrates when you speak, in how grounded your eye contact feels, in how still you remain when tension rises, in how your chest feels like home, not a courtroom. She evaluates you not on the content of your words, but on the energy beneath them. A man can say nothing and communicate everything. A man can say everything and communicate nothing. Emotional leadership vs. emotional dumping. Here's the critical difference most men never learn. Emotional leadership is when you feel deeply but remain rooted. You process your emotions internally, share selectively, and never lose your center. Emotional dumping is when you hand her your unresolved chaos and expect her to stabilize you. The first draws her closer. The second drains her attraction. She doesn't want to become your therapist. She wants to feel safe surrendering to your leadership, because safety isn't built through vulnerability alone. Safety is built through your capacity to hold both, her emotions and your own without collapse. A man who feels deeply, but doesn't become what he feels. The tests you keep failing when a woman says, "I'm fine." She's not fine. She's testing if you can sense the unspoken. "I don't know what I want." She knows what she feels. She's waiting to see if you'll lead anyway. Maybe we should take a break. She's not always seeking distance. She's testing if you'll collapse into fear or stand calmly in your worth. Most men fail these tests. They panic, they over-explain, they beg. They chase, and with every desperate move, her nervous system recoils. Because leadership isn't about controlling her, it's about mastering yourself. The silence before the storm. Here's a moment most men misinterpret. When a woman stops complaining, stops initiating, stops nagging, men often think, finally, peace. But that silence is not peace. It's emotional death. Because when a woman stops engaging emotionally, it's often because her nervous system has already resolved the question of you. You're no longer the mountain. You're no longer the mystery. You've become predictable, and predictable is the graveyard of desire. You went from leader to pleaser, from edge to echo, and no woman alive stays attracted to an echo. Why your gifts, your effort, your love stop working? This is the part that breaks most men. You continue giving more gifts, more romantic gestures, more sacrifices. But instead of reigniting her desire, you suffocate it. Because what you don't realize is this: effort is transactional, energy is spiritual. A woman doesn't fall for your effort. She falls for your energy. And the moment your masculine energy becomes malnourished, starved by your own self-abandonment, everything you give begins to rot in her hands. You are pouring wine into a cracked glass. The dangerous calm she craves. Why does the man who seems less invested, the one society calls toxic, often hold her attention longer? Because he carries a dangerous calm. He's not emotionally dependent. He's not seeking validation. He's not collapsing into her mood swings. He may not even fully understand it himself, but his indifference projects stability, not because he doesn't feel, but because he refuses to be consumed by feeling. And that stability whispers to her, primal self, I can surrender to this man. The language of emotional gravity, attraction isn't logical, it's gravitational. You don't win her desire through words. You win it through state, through your grounded breath, through your steady voice, through your relaxed posture, through your unflinching eyes. Your calm is her safety. Your certainty is her permission to feel. You are not her source of happiness. You are her anchor. And when you lose that center, even while loving her deeply, you lose the very energy that first captivated her in the first place. Schopenhauer's X-ray vision. Schopenhauer saw what most modern men refuse to accept. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't romanticize it. He saw love not as a fairy tale, but as a biological mechanism. In their hearts, women think that they were created only for the propagation of the species and not for the sake of man himself. Her biology isn't personal. It's primal, and once you stop fighting this reality, once you stop demanding she validate you with her words, you reclaim your masculine freedom because you no longer chase her emotions. You lead them. The dangerous attraction. Why she craves the man who doesn't chase. Let's confront the truth that most men secretly fear. The man she chases isn't always the man who treats her best. You've seen it. The toxic man. The man who doesn't answer her texts right away. The man who seems indifferent. The man who isn't desperate for her attention. And yet, he holds her mind hostage. She thinks about him. She wonders where he is. She feels the tension of not knowing. Meanwhile, the good man, the one who's always available, always reassuring, always performing, sits in confusion, asking, why does she choose him over me? The answer isn't romantic, it's biological. It's primal. It's the brutal engine that drives female attraction. Dangerous calm. Why danger attracts her nervous system. Let's be clear, when we say dangerous, we're not talking about recklessness, cruelty, or abuse. We're talking about the unshakable sovereignty of a man who cannot be emotionally manipulated because he doesn't need validation. He carries dangerous calm because he's fully self-sufficient. He is his own mission. He doesn't orbit her mood. He doesn't collapse under her emotions. He stands rooted in himself. To her nervous system, this signals one thing. This man can handle the world. Therefore, I can surrender to him. Her biology is scanning constantly. Can he lead? Can he hold my storms? Can he protect me, not just from the world, but from my own emotional volatility? Most men fail not because they are bad people. They fail because they try to fix her emotions rather than anchor them. They collapse into her emotional waves rather than standing as her lighthouse. Tension is the oxygen of attraction. Attraction feeds on one essential nutrient: tension. When tension dies, desire suffocates. Tension between certainty and unpredictability. Tension between masculine stability and feminine chaos. Tension between his calm and her fire. This tension creates emotional electricity. It keeps her leaning forward, wondering, anticipating. It activates her primal polarity. Without tension, there's no seduction. Without seduction, you're not her man. You're her emotional employee. And here's where most men kill the tension. Over-explaining, over-reassuring, over-communicating, over-investing emotionally. Every time you remove the mystery, you remove the magnetism. Predictability is the death of desire. When she knows exactly what you'll say. When she knows exactly how you'll respond. When she can fully predict every move you make, her nervous system goes dormant. Not because she stops loving you, but because the dance is dead. The dance between masculine mystery and feminine surrender requires one unbreakable rule. You must remain unpredictable, not in your integrity, but in your emotional independence. When you become emotionally predictable, you turn into background noise, comfortable, safe, but uninspiring, and uninspired women eventually leave. Her chaos isn't a problem. It's an invitation. Feminine chaos often scares men. The mood swings, the emotional waves, the unpredictable storms. Men try to stabilize her by negotiating with her emotions, but her chaos isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a test of your stability, patience, strength, leadership. She subconsciously asks, can you hold me when I can't hold myself? The man who panics fails. The man who explains fails. The man who remains calm leads. She's not trying to destroy you, she's trying to see if you're worth following. When the world burns. The unapologetic masculine presence attraction flourishes when a man carries unapologetic masculine energy. Calm eyes, relaxed breath, grounded voice, steady posture, unshakable purpose. You are not chasing her emotions. You are not asking for permission to lead. You are not seeking her validation. You simply stand. And in your stillness, she feels safe to surrender. Why she leaves the safe man. Ironically, the man who tries the hardest to make her feel safe often becomes the man she no longer desires. Why? Because safety without strength feels sterile, predictable, passive, emotionally dependent. She may stay for a while out of guilt or comfort, but her biology eventually revolts because her primal self needs polarity. She needs the storm and stillness. Dynamic. Without it, her nervous system starves. And when that starvation hits, she begins to rewrite history. I don't know what happened. I just stopped feeling it. We grew apart. In reality, the masculine gravity she once surrendered to has dissolved. The lie society sold you. Modern society sold you a dangerous lie. Be nice. Be agreeable. Be emotionally available. Be endlessly sensitive. They told you that the way to a woman's heart was to become emotionally transparent, hyper-available, and self-sacrificing. But Schopenhauer knew better. Women are instinctively cunning and know that to control a man, they must not always say what they mean, nor mean what they say. He wasn't accusing women of malice. He was exposing the biological reality. Her words reflect her momentary emotions. Her actions reflect her primal design. You listened to her words. You ignored her energy, and in doing so, you lost the unspoken dance. Why she craves the man who doesn't need her. The paradox is brutal. The less you need her, the more she desires you. Not because you're distant or cruel, but because your independence radiates masculine vitality. You're whole before her. You're centered with or without her. You lead from abundance, not desperation. You were not born to beg. You were born to build. This is terrifying for most men, because standing alone exposes every unresolved insecurity. But it's only through that fire that true masculine sovereignty is forged. The unfakeable essence. You can't fake this energy. No amount of pickup lines, no number of self-help books, no memorized tactics. You either embody it or you don't, because women feel it on a cellular level. You either become that man or you keep losing to the version of yourself that never grew past boyhood. She senses the boy pretending to be the man, and no woman remains attracted to a boy. The initiation into masculine gravity. Here's your initiation. Stop performing. Stop chasing. Stop begging. Stop over-explaining. Begin building yourself. Build your mission. Build your body. Build your discipline. Build your purpose. Not for her, for you. Because when you build from wholeness, you become magnetic, and suddenly she leans in. She wonders, she chases, she feels, because the man she once admired has returned. The final law of dangerous attraction. Let's simplify everything into one law. The more you orbit her emotions, the more she drifts away. The more you anchor yourself, the more she orbits you. That's the dangerous attraction. That's the law no one teaches you. But once you see it, you can never unsee it. And when you embody it, you no longer fear her storms, because you become the lighthouse. Stop trying to understand her. Understand yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You were never meant to fully understand her. Not because she's mysterious, not because she's complicated, not because she's deceptive, but because her operating system isn't designed to be understood by logic. It's designed to be felt. The problem is not that women are confusing. The problem is that men approach women with the wrong framework. Analysis instead of alignment. Dissection instead of embodiment. The illusion of decryption. You've been trained, like most men, to seek formulas. If I say the right words, she'll feel safe. If I give enough, she'll feel loved. If I explain myself, she'll understand. But emotional connection doesn't work like coding. There is no linear input-output formula. She doesn't want what she says. She wants what she feels safe admiring. Your endless quest to decode her is the very thing causing your confusion. Because every time you try to figure her out, you step further into her world, and further away from your center, the trap of adaptive identity in your desire to please. You begin adjusting yourself, suppressing your needs, adopting her preferences, shrinking your edges, bending your mission. You slowly become the version of yourself you think she wants. At first, she may appreciate the attention, but over time she senses something missing: your masculine sovereignty. The man who once stood tall now crouches emotionally. The man who once invited her into his life now orbits hers. The man she once admired now seeks constant reassurance, and her nervous system responds with quiet withdrawal. You went from leader to pleaser, from edge to echo. You don't lead by understanding her. You lead by mastering yourself. The paradox is cruel but liberating. She doesn't crave your perfect understanding. She craves your unwavering direction. Your emotional leadership isn't built by understanding every nuance of her feelings. It's built by standing so firmly in your purpose that her emotions can dance around you without destabilizing you. You hold space. You remain calm. You don't flinch. You don't collapse. You lead not because you control her emotions, but because you are unshaken by them. The feminine storms, your training ground. Feminine emotion is fluid. Some days she'll pull you closer. Other days she'll retreat. Some moments she'll test your boundaries. Other moments she'll crave your grounding. Most men experience these fluctuations as she's unstable, she's moody, she's unpredictable. But what you call instability is her nature seeking stability in you. Her chaos is the proving ground for your leadership. She's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to see if you're worth following when the world burns. If you fail these storms by panicking, over-explaining, or shrinking, she subconsciously concludes, I must lead because he cannot. The moment she senses she must lead, the dance dies. You're not competing with other men. You're competing with your own energy. The battlefield isn't crowded with rivals. The battlefield is internal. You lose her not because another man outperformed you. You lose her because you abandoned the masculine frame that first attracted her. Her biology isn't comparing you to others. It's measuring your energy against your previous self. Were you leading? Were you rooted? Were you unshaken? The boy inside the man. Many men unknowingly bring their boyhood wounds into adult relationships, seeking maternal approval, craving unconditional acceptance, needing emotional reassurance. When you seek in your partner what you never resolved within yourself, you burden her with an impossible task to mother your soul while surrendering to your leadership. She cannot do both. The boy inside you must be healed by you, not by her. You must become the father to yourself. You must anchor your own storms, because when you do, you liberate her from the role of caretaker and invite her into the role of surrendered feminine counterpart. The myth of earning love. One of the most destructive lies you've been sold is this: if I love her harder, she'll stay. Love is not a transaction. You cannot bargain for respect. You cannot negotiate for desire. The more you chase, the more you repel. Your vulnerability becomes heavy. Your devotion becomes suffocating. Your effort becomes noise. You don't earn her admiration. You embody it. The rise of the unneeded man, the most attractive man in any woman's life, is not the man she needs. It's the man who doesn't need her but chooses her from abundance. He stands alone. He walks alone if necessary. He does not seek completion in her presence. He remains whole with or without her. You were not born to beg. You were born to build. This is terrifying for most men, because standing alone exposes every unresolved insecurity. But it's only through that fire that true masculine sovereignty is forged. The masochism of validation seeking. Every time you seek validation, you diminish your frame, weaken your gravity, signal neediness. The masculine man validates himself. He sets his standards. He lives by his principles. He remains calm in the face of withdrawal. If she leans in, he welcomes. If she pulls away, he releases. Freedom is his compass. not attachment. Why most relationships collapse. Most relationships don't end from betrayal. They end from slow suffocation, the death of polarity, the erosion of mystery, the collapse of leadership. She doesn't leave because you stopped loving her. She leaves because you stopped leading yourself. The greatest betrayal wasn't of her trust. It was of your own masculine essence. Your task isn't to please her, it's to stand so strongly she feels safe. To surrender, understand this once and for all. She doesn't want to lead. She doesn't want to mother you. She doesn't want to validate your worth. She wants to feel the gravity of your presence. The man who feels deeply but holds steady. The man who listens but does not collapse. The man who loves fiercely but remains free. When you become this man, you stop chasing her understanding. You no longer decode her moods. You embody your mission, and in your mission, she finds rest. The reclamation of masculine clarity. This is your path. Forward, stop asking, what does she want? Start asking, who am I becoming? Because when you build your clarity, you remove the need for her emotional roadmap. You no longer seek her permission. You invite her into your sovereign world. And when she feels the security of your sovereignty, she leans in, not because you chased, but because you stood. The unbreakable truth, you don't lose her because you couldn't figure her out. You lose her because you abandoned your own energy trying. Reclaim yourself and watch her nature return. The call to awakening. The reclamation of the modern man. Brother, you've heard enough of her. You've tried to understand her. You've bent yourself for her. You've drowned yourself in the advice of therapists, influencers, and well-meaning friends who kept telling you, if you just love her enough, she'll stay. And yet, here you are, confused, exhausted, disillusioned, because the truth no one told you is simple. You were never supposed to chase her happiness. You were supposed to embody your own. Her attraction to you was never built on how perfectly you loved her. It was built on how completely you owned yourself. The myth of the servant king. They sold you a lie, that if you sacrifice enough, compromise enough, soften enough, you'll be the man she chooses. But what they never explained was this. Sacrifice without boundaries turns kings into caretakers. Compromise without standards turns leaders into followers. Every time you gave up your frame for her comfort, you chipped away at the gravity that made her feel safe in the first place. She stopped respecting you, not because you were bad, but because you stopped being you. You became a servant where you once stood as king. The lost art of masculine boundaries, masculine leadership isn't tyranny. It isn't domination. It isn't control. It's direction. You hold your standards. You lead with certainty. You invite her into your world, but never make her your world. A man who is not master of himself is not fit to be the master of anything, least of all a woman's heart. Schopenhauer, your first and greatest responsibility is sovereignty over yourself, not her emotions, not her moods, not her choices. Your energy must remain centered, whether she leans in or walks away. The trap of emotional dependency is subtle. You wait for her text. You measure your mood by her reactions. You feel stable. Only when she's smiling. You collapse when she withdraws. But when your inner world is tied to her outer world, you've surrendered your power. You cannot lead from emotional dependency. You must be the man whose state remains unshaken regardless of her weather. Her storms don't define your sky. The power of masculine stillness. Stillness isn't passivity. Stillness is unflinching clarity. When she tests, you stay calm. When she pushes, you hold firm. When she doubts, you remain certain. When she wavers, you stay rooted. This stillness creates the space for her feminine energy to fully express itself. She no longer fears your collapse. She no longer questions your strength, because your leadership isn't forced. It's embodied. The awakening isn't external. It's internal. Most men seek external solutions. More gifts, more romance, more reassurances. But masculine awakening doesn't begin with her. It begins the moment you declare, I would rather be alone than unseen. When your self-worth no longer depends on her validation, when your peace no longer depends on her mood, when your mission no longer depends on her participation, you become untouchable, not cold, not indifferent, but complete. Solitude is not a curse. It's the forge many men fear solitude. They equate being alone with being unworthy. But Schopenhauer knew better. The person who seeks solitude is one who has discovered that the world, particularly the social world, is incapable of satisfying him. Solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. In solitude, you refine your mission, you sharpen your discipline, you rediscover your edges, you confront your shadows, you become the man who stands fully on his own foundation. And when you emerge, you no longer seek her to complete you, you invite her to complement you. The transformation she feels before you speak, when you reclaim your energy, your voice deepens, your gaze sharpens, your presence thickens, your movements slow, your stillness speaks. You no longer need to seduce with words. Your state becomes the seduction. Her body responds before her mind catches up. Because at her core, she's wired to surrender to energy, not effort. The energy of leadership, the energy of certainty, the energy of self-mastery, the rise of the self-possessed man. The man who is fully awakened carries a different aura. He doesn't argue for his worth. He doesn't explain his boundaries. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't seek to be chosen. He simply is. And from this space, some women will rise to meet him. Some will test and fail. Some will leave. But he remains unshaken, because his worth was never tied to external acceptance. He walks alone because he chooses his path, not because he has no options. The final lie. You must bury. The world taught you that love is earned through service, sacrifice, and softness. But Schopenhauer saw what most modern men still refuse to face. Attraction is not earned. It is commanded, not through domination, but through unwavering masculine clarity. The reclamation of your throne, you were never meant to grovel for affection. You were meant to build a kingdom so stable, so clear, so purpose-driven, that only the women strong enough to surrender would enter. Not because you forced them, not because you tricked them, but because your energy made resistance impossible. You were not born to beg, you were born to build. The Brotherhood of the Awakened, if you're hearing this now, you're not lost. You're being called to reclaim your discipline, your mission, your sovereignty, your stillness, because a generation of men has been sedated by softness. It's time for you to awaken, not to dominate women, but to embody yourself so fully that women no longer become your compass. You become your own, and when you do, everything changes. The unbreakable man, in the end. The man who no longer seeks to understand her becomes the man she cannot ignore, because his energy radiates the one thing her nervous system craves more than love: certainty. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't chase, he doesn't collapse. He simply stands, and in that standing, he becomes undeniable. The final truth. Her test is your baptism. If you've made it this far, brother, you now stand at the edge of a truth that most men will never face. She was never your enemy. Her contradictions, her tests, her emotional waves, her withdrawal, they were never attacks on you. They were reflections of something far deeper, your own relationship with yourself. She was not confused. You were, because you believed the words, you believed the advice. You believed that love was something to be earned, negotiated, or performed, but what you missed was this. Love, to her body, not her mind, is gravitational. The baptism of masculinity, heartbreak, wasn't your punishment. It was your initiation. Your suffering wasn't proof of your failure. It was your awakening. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every withdrawal was the forge refining your edges, stripping away the boy who sought permission, and revealing the man who stands without needing it. You don't rise by resenting her. You rise by understanding her nature and mastering yours. This is the true baptism of masculinity, not anger, not bitterness, not revenge. Clarity, Schopenhauer's final witness. Schopenhauer saw through the illusions of romantic fantasy long before modern men could articulate their suffering. Women exist in the main solely for the propagation of the species and are only the means thereto. Modern ears recoil at such statements, but behind the sharpness lies freedom, because once you understand that her tests are not personal but biological, you stop collapsing into confusion. You stop seeking her approval. You start leading yourself. The liberation most men never reach. The man who awakens no longer seeks to decode her signals. He reads energy, not words. He remains still amidst her storms. He loves without losing himself. He does not fear her withdrawal. He does not panic at her distance because he knows if she rises to meet his energy, it's alignment. If she doesn't, it's elimination. Either way, he wins. The kingdom waits. You were not born to orbit her moods. You were born to build a mission, to build a vision, to build a legacy. And when you build, the right feminine energy will find its way. Not because you chased it, but because your gravity made it impossible to resist. Let Schopenhauer be your witness. Let your pain be your curriculum. Let your solitude be your sanctuary, not your sentence. The final call, brother. If these words stirred something inside you, it's not coincidence. It's your masculine soul awakening from sedation. The throne is not lost. It's waiting. Now rise, reclaim it, lead, not for her, but for you. And if she chooses to follow, she'll follow because she can finally feel what words could never create. Your undeniable gravity.